Welcome to the Angle Fantasy Basketball Podcast. I am your host, Andrew. Today, we are here to discuss the greatest dynasty league in existence, the Angle Dynasty League. We are going to cover a few trades that have happened in that league. Today, I am joined by two guests. The first one making his long-awaited appearance on the podcast. He is one of the members of Point Made Basketball, runs one of the best Twitter accounts in the game if you are a big basketball fan. Josh, how are you doing today, sir?
So, Andrew, man, honored to be here. Appreciate the invite, man. Looking forward to chatting up with you guys, delving into your Dynasty League and everything, man. Honored to be here. Appreciate y'all.
Very good. Very good. Glad to have you on the pod for the first time. We love being able to collaborate with other content creators. So I am also joined by one of my partners here at Angle, Mitchell. Good, sir. How are you doing today?
Pretty good, man. Little context, today was a pretty good day. I got to take a picture with the MLS Cup, which is the soccer equivalent to the NBA Finals trophy. So, go Galaxy.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that should be stated as soccer equivalent for American soccer specifically, but still pretty cool picture to have nonetheless. All right, so our goal for today, we do these dynasty trade videos for our league specifically, where we cover trades that have happened within our league. And part of what we wanted to do when we put this league together was add other dynasty minds or fantasy analysts as well as content creators in that league, so we can discuss their teams with them and do some content collaboration. So part of today, what we're going to do is we're going to go over a couple of trades that Josh's team has made in our league, and we're also going to go over his roster a little bit. But one thing I want to go over with you first, Josh, for people that don't know, in dynasty basketball, you do have the ability to co-commission a team. It doesn't have to just be you as the owner. Specifically in Fantrax, that allows you that flexibility. So Josh, you co-own this team with one of the other guys at Point Made, Sam. So just, give the listeners a little insight what it's like to co-own and co-operate a dynasty team.
I think for me, when it comes to just having a team in dynasty in general, I really want to be able to put my all into it. A lot of the fun and the energy comes from being competitive, or at least having kind of a timeline that I want to follow and adhere to. But just when you get into the content creation aspect and you're just in so many different leagues, being able to balance that by having a co-owner, having someone to run and bounce ideas off of, like what I'm doing with Sam. And it's always fun because Sam and I are we consider each other rivals. We always butt heads and everything. He's a Celtics fan. I'm a Sixers fan. So it goes down to the core, right? Like our rivalry and everything. But being able to have that person who, can keep me in check when I'm too biased into a player and vice versa, I think it really helps us kind of just run a very balanced approach to what we're doing when it comes to a dynasty league. But it's also just dynasty is about having as much fun as possible. So if I'm co-running a team with someone that I get along with, like Sam, just makes it all the more funner.
I couldn't agree more. Just how fun Dynasty is, especially collaborating with other minds. And, like you guys at Point Made, there's 4 of you guys, and here at Angle, there's 3 of us. So it's fun to do that collaboration, especially having, 1 or 2 guys in the group designated kind of as almost like the devil's advocate. Shout out to Braxton to help us avoid groupthink among the members is definitely a very helpful and useful tool to have moving forward. So here we are on Josh and Sam's team within the Angle Dynasty League. So this is a real salary 30-team Dynasty League. Josh, take it from here. Break us down what your guys' process was, coming through the draft and how you're feeling about this team moving forward.
For sure. So just coming into this league, it's 30-team salary league, real salary. It's really different for what we typically do over at Point Made and just my general experience with Dynasty, which is what made me so excited about joining it in the first place, because you're not just balancing how much a player is valued in terms of as a fantasy basketball player or as a dynasty basketball player, but also you're balancing that with where their real world value is too, in terms of the salary that you're dealing with. So it's definitely a new approach to a salary cap-based league that we weren't used to. We're used to custom salaries where we kind of are able to kind of create those subjective figures ourselves within the league over periods of time. So being able to delve into that was definitely a new approach that we wanted to dig into, but being able to balance that with the first pick overall being Joel Embiid, it kind of set the tone. Like our team is going to go wherever Joel Embiid goes, and he's been missing for a while. So that's definitely helped us drop down in terms of our standings in Angle Basketball League. But I think in terms of our overall team building approach, we have a lot of flexibility, right? We have 4 first-round picks in 2025. That goes hand in hand with how we kind of approached it, because whenever you're building a team in Dynasty, you really want to factor in that risk tolerance approach. And we have a lot of risk in being able to roster Joel Embiid. So our moves after acquiring him or drafting him was to kind of balance out some of that risk while also giving us a competitive team too, because we know our window goes where Embiid goes. But if he's injured, if he's hurt, he's not available, then we're going to want to be able to pivot in different directions too, which is what we wanted to do with our team building.
All right, very good. So for this roster here, you guys are actually, despite Joel being in and out of the lineup, you're in 11th place. So in the league like this one, the top 16 teams make playoffs. So you guys do currently occupy a playoff spot despite that. But there has been some great performances, and one of the ones I do owe you an apology for. So if you did, I don't know if you watched it or not, but in a previous trade episode, I thought I favored the side that got Tijan Salon. I believe that was one of the trades that you made. But right. Yves Missi is way better. That was in the preseason, but yeah, Yves Missi is incredible. So that was a great move by you guys to land him.
Yeah, something. Tijan Salon, yeah. Oh, my fault. You go ahead first, Mitchell. No,
yeah, I just wanted to kind of really appreciate the roster construction here that you've built out. And what people don't realize is that those 5 first-round picks that you have that are tradable, you have 6 in total, those are going to be highly desirable during the trade deadline. And if Joel Embiid is healthy and come playoff time, you make those upgrades, you use and leverage those picks to some of the tankers who are willing to dive off on those veterans that are contributing and like a potential opportunity for them to, get draft capital. I can see your team making a real run. You have the most flexibility out of those playoff contenders in accomplishing that. A lot of the teams in that playoff tier don't actually have a tradable first round pick, but you guys at Point Made, you have 5. So that's very enticing. And Andrew, as a fellow contender, does that kind of give you a little bit of ambiguity here with his team potentially surging later in the year?
Well, I mean, so one thing you didn't mention too, he has about $7 million in cap space, so that's a good amount to work with. Some dead cap that he could potentially get rid of if they wanted to. They don't have to. Like, they could move off Kyle Anderson if they wanted to open up even more space for themselves. But one thing that also has to be mentioned is not only was Embiid in and out of the lineup, they have Jaden Ivey too, who's now currently hurt. So despite that amount of injuries, 43 games combined so far out of the year out of Embiid and Ivy. And I think there's been, 45-ish games that have already happened so far. So combined, those guys have missed, a significant amount of time, yet here they are occupying a playoff spot. So, as Josh was saying, the direction of the team is going to go wherever Embiid goes. So if it gets to a point, come March when fantasy playoffs do typically happen, and the Sixers do have Embiid ramped up into a larger role, then that could definitely be their green light to maybe move 1 or 2 of those firsts and go for more of a push up the playoffs, maybe try to upset one of the higher seeds. Because this, to me, seems like a team that should not be a lower seed. They should be a bit higher up. So it could be one of those sleepers that can take out a higher seed come playoff time.
Yeah, I think pre-injury, when we kind of had Embiid in there we were, top 6. So I think in terms of ceiling, we have it. We have different guys in there. Quentin Grimes, of course, who we picked up with Hardy in a trade in the offseason. A lot of guys that have overperformed in comparison to where they were at the beginning. Just kind of circling back to the Yves Missi trade, I think just knowing our timeline, and that's what I stress when it comes to Dynasty. First is discovering what your timeline looks like and being able to create trades after that, because you don't want corresponding dual timelines occurring. Just for a real world example, just like the Portland Trail Blazers, right? We have guys like Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe getting kind of put aside for people like, Jeremy Grant or DeAndre Ayton, kind of known commodities, but their prospects that you have are kind of wasting away at the bench. So we also know that Embiid is there. He has a window. Regardless of how injured he is, we know they're not going to sit him for the rest of the year. Like, he has a window that's shutting very quickly in Philadelphia. And as a Sixers fan, I'm very realistic about that. So just knowing that we have Embiid there, and when he plays, he's one of the top 3 players, top 5 players in fantasy basketball, and he can take us a long way. So like what you guys said, we definitely wanted the flexibility to be able to capitalize on that. We also want the youth and the draft picks to be able to pivot away just in case it does happen where he doesn't play the rest of the year because of these lingering injuries. And we got Omax over there too, chilling in our minors that we're gonna have to activate pretty soon. It's kind of balling now.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he is.
You got the cap space to make it happen too.
I saw a couple
Yeah, we're
20
gonna have
point
to,
games by Omax.
yeah, we're gonna have to free him pretty soon. I thought he'd be able to chill there for a little bit longer, but and Ivy hasn't been ruled out for the year. In terms of his fibula injury, it's one of the best. If you're gonna break something in your leg, that's where you want to break. You got like usually 2 month timeline on that, depending on the sport. So the severity of the injury, they haven't really said anything about it, but they haven't ruled him out for this season. So it kind of makes me a little optimistic on a return date here in the next couple months.
Yeah, and in leagues like this one, I always love those cheap contributors. Like, in standard fantasy, like 12 teams, a lot of people don't pay attention to names like this. But for someone like myself and Mitchell, who regularly play in 30 teams, you find those guys at the very end of benches that you like a lot. So, for example, on your squad, Ricky Council. Ricky Council is a good guy to have. Just at the very end of your bench, he costs basically nothing. He's got good positional versatility, and will put up some numbers if there's some guys sitting out. Jaden Hardy's another one too. Of course, with rookie scale deals, Yves Misi being selected later on in the draft is only making $3 million too. So yeah, lots of financial flexibility and good cheap contributors. I always love seeing that.
Yeah, and there you can see kind of our fandom bias kind of peek through with picks like Ricky Council, C4, that's my guy. I'm like, yo, Sam, we got to pick him here. He's going to break out this year if he gets a little bit of opportunity. You get guys like Jordan Walsh down there in our minors who Sam loves, who I don't really buy currently, but long term he has the size at wing position, kind of like Omax, where that size is so valuable with athleticism. If you can kind of put that together, he can be a successful, at least rotational player. And a league so deep, having guys like that could just play those rotational minutes sometimes just kind of make the difference.
Yeah, when I went to Summer League, I liked what I saw from City Sissoko as well. I caught one Spurs game. It was the only game that Steph Castle played in, and I definitely liked what I saw from Sissoko too. So I haven't caught up on too much of what he's doing in the G League so far, but that's another one to watch out for you guys. And of course, all those incoming first as well. I mean, Mitch, they even have the flexibility. They can trade one or two for an upgrade and then still have one or two, rookies to draft in come draft day, huh?
Definitely. I mean, there is so much flexibility with this roster. You have desirable firsts, like the Houston one, the Mavs one. Those are some mid to late teens picks that people are going to want to take a chance on and maybe roll the dice for a known commodity that you can definitely use for that title run. So, very excited for your future. You have a lot of minor eligibility in terms of rookies or players that are on rookie scale contracts and relatively cheap veterans like a Kyle Anderson and a Cody Martin, who is a bit underrated to most circles. So, very excited about your team moving forward. And now let's get into some of your trades that you've made over the past year or so.
All right. So here's the first trade here or not the first trade that they made, but one of the first trades we're going to discuss that Point made, executed. I think this was earlier on in the year, or potentially even in the preseason. So they sent away Bam Adebayo and TJ McConnell and received Pascal Siakam, Jeremy Sochan, and a 2025 second round pick in return. So Josh, walk us through your thought process on that.
So the main process is this. I know we're losing the best player in Bam in this deal, but we get a little bit, I think we recoup some of that value in Jeremy Sochan, who I know we eventually ended up moving anyways, but Sohan's the guy that I kind of pegged as a breakout player to start the year. And I figured that in terms of our build, we got guys like Jaden Ivey, we have Embiid and everything. Siakam felt like a good fit as well. So it helped us once again with that flexibility of being able to have youth in Sochan, but also have that win now value in a person that Siakam, who has really performed pretty well, I think, in terms of category leagues this year. And then Sochan, just betting on that upside, betting on him delivering, but also being able to ship him. We're always looking to make moves, looking to make deals when we're in a league like this. I think we had like a huge flurry of trades when we first joined and the draft finished and everything. And that's just that's the best part of Dynasty basketball, being able to shape your team the way you want to.
And Josh, just a quick question to provide me some context on this deal. Did you trade Bam Adebayo before his max extension?
Yeah, so we felt extension coming, and once it, like we said, we're not used to the salary aspect so much, but just knowing that it's another jigsaw puzzle that you need to balance when you're doing your team construction, and you have these, extensions coming in like that. Siakam had an extension pending too, so that's something that I was telling Sam, like, it's gonna be an increase in value in the short term, and of course it looks a little bit better in hindsight with Bam kind of underperforming, but I think the buy low window on Bam is fully open right now. Like a lot of people are really underrating him, talking to him like he's not a top high end center anymore. He's still that dude. I think there's a lot of dysfunction going on in Miami that's impacting his value. But now that Kel'el Ware is there, and we've seen it in the Olympics how successful Bam could be alongside another big. So Ware's emergence has been huge, and I think it's going to really help him unlock and showcase some of that playmaking that he has too. And Siakam's just a steady contributor. We really like that alongside what we have in terms of our Knicks squad right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Siakam has had a bounce back year. I mean, he had a rough one coming into Indiana. He was traded in the trade deadline. He was thrusted in a new system. So it takes that adjustment period, and you bet that he would adjust. They went to the Eastern Conference Finals with the success of a Pascal Siakam. You know, I believe Tyrese Halliburton, he had an injury. Siakam stepped up. He was the focal point, the offensive engine that led him to the first two series wins. So, Siakam has been a good contributor on your team as pretty much your driving force alongside Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, 100%. And Siakam, I think a lot of that has to do hand in hand with some of those lingering issues that Tyrese has that doesn't allow him to kind of shoulder as much weight as he has in the offense now. So Siakam's kind of really stepped up into that. And you can see how the team building approach that they have in Indiana is finding different pieces that they can use to kind of unlock Siakam even further. They've really committed to him as being a franchise cornerstone. And, they're going to make the moves corresponding that be able to unlock that. So I'm happy to see it, having him on our team.
yeah, he's got a more consistent role right now than, Spoelstra is really toying with that Miami rotation throughout this year. Like, I know I had Jovic on my team for a little bit this year, and pretty much the entire time I had him on my team this year was the period of this year where Spoelstra just didn't have him in the rotation at all for whatever reason. Now, obviously, he's back in the rotation again and is doing great. So, yeah, they've moved the rotation around a little bit. So, kind of just not dealing with that and going with, obviously Carlisle's going to play Siakam as much as he can. So, going to a more consistent source like that, I like that move for you after trading with our friend Adrian at Velez Sarsfield. All right, so let's move on to the next trade we're going to discuss for you guys that you guys made. So after you acquired Jeremy Sochan, you sent him and Reggie Jackson to Blackwater Bossing, where you received Quentin Grimes, Jaden Hardy, a couple of solid Mavs role players, in addition to a 2025 first-round pick. So walk us through that, and also let us know where you think that first-round pick might fall at if you still own that.
Yeah, we still have that pick. It's probably going to be a pretty late first round pick. But I'm fine with that. I'm pretty confident in my drafting ability and scouting ability to kind of get some value, squeeze some value out of that if we need to, if we hold on to it. But if that is a pick, if we do make some moves at the deadline, that's probably one we're going to shop around. But in terms of Sochan, I love Sochan. Like I told you earlier, I thought he was going to break out this year, and he has. It's when he's been healthy. He's had some injuries here that kind of kept him out. But in terms of his improvement over his play, he's a top tier pick and roll finisher. He's one of those guys has really good synergy with Victor Wembanyama. So he's definitely unlocked that next tier of his skill set. But like I said, when we talk about our team building approach, we always want that flexibility. And if there's some draft capital coming our way, and we feel like we're not hitting a big hit in terms of our player value. And Quentin Grimes is a guy that I've kind of talked about too, especially on Twitter last year. It just doesn't feel like he would always be that back end role player, right? Like he's shown that he could be this efficient shooter, and on a team like Dallas that has dynamic ball handlers and playmakers like Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic, being able to have those consistent, reliable go-to shooters with size and the positional flexibility to play alongside both, I feel like that would have been a good year for Grimes to pick up. And then just also knowing that injury history of Doncic being able to get rested towards the end of the season, and Kyrie Irving himself as well, who has been relatively healthy over the last couple of years. But I just wanted to kind of bet on some of that upside of Jaden Hardy being able to kind of fill in as a spot starter instead of Reggie Jackson, who we had. So we felt like we were getting near to close in player value with having those both, and then having that draft capital as well to kind of give us some more flexibility. We really like it.
Yeah, Josh, you make a great point, and honestly, in hindsight, this is a great trade because what people tend to forget in 30 teams is that diversifying your assets is so essential in building a competitive roster, especially in a start six. You're going to want these players that contribute all across the board because we've seen cases, Andrew, we share multiple 30 team leagues. Those teams who are top heavy, who have, three max contracts, one of them goes down during playoffs, they're cooked, you know. But if you have guys like Quentin Grimes who provide you as like a steady, 10 points, three rebounds, two assists, three assists, and a steal, someone who could step in and void of the injury to your star player, it's paramount, and you're going up against teams in silly season, right? So a lot of times in playoffs, we play all the way till the end of March, where, those tanking teams are resting their star players a lot of times. You bought some guys that are going to contribute and help capitalize on some of those on those resting days for some of those teams that are trying to contend and have those star players like a Larry Markkinen or, those type of teams like the Jazz have. Players that the Jazz have, like a Laurie and a John Collins, or per se.
For
Exactly.
sure.
And another part of it too, like it really does seem like a lot of role players benefit from being in this Mavs system. Like look at the two bigs that they have in Gafford and Lively. A lot of their wings players, PJ Washington is a lot more, just at least a bit more reliable on Dallas than, how streaky he usually was on Charlotte. So they have a good system going on where a lot of these where a lot of the supporting cast really benefits from playing around Luka and Kyrie. And then of course if one of those two goes out, that's where these guys see an increased role, especially someone like a Jaden Hardy who's capable of going off for 20 plus if one or both of the big boys on Dallas are sitting. And that's just a philosophy that I try to tend more towards in 30 teams lately. It's something that Braxton has always done, which is being 12 deep. So in these 30 team leagues, you usually have 12 guys that are able to be played on your roster, and being 12 deep is such a huge benefit to you. And that's exactly why you guys are still in a playoff spot despite Joel Embiid and Jaden Ivey missing a bunch of times, because your roster is 12 deep. So even though one of those two guys is out, you're not playing, Keaton Wallace or something like that because you couldn't afford anybody else. You have guys who are able to step up into the rotation for you when somebody does get hurt. And I also must add, Reggie Jackson is currently on our waiver wire. So it is basically Sochan alone for all three of those assets. So I'm sure nobody was really factoring in Reggie anyways.
Grimes and Hardy are
You hit
still
the nail on
young
the head
too.
there. Facts. You hit the nail on the head right there. Just having Embiid be our cornerstone for our franchise, like we need that risk tolerance. We need that balance. We need that depth in terms of players, but we also need that draft capital just in case we do have to start trending towards being a tanking team or trying to pivot towards next year.
All right, so let's move on to some other trades that have happened in the league. So this is going to explore into some other teams that we have. So this trade involves the Beijing Ducks and the Kanazawa Samurais. So Beijing sends away Stephon Castle, Mark Williams, Kevon Looney, and Bradley Beal. This is a 4-for-2 swap. And the Samurais sends away Karl Anthony Towns and Drew Holiday. So this is a move where one team was consolidating to receive less players, maybe move some guys up in their depth chart, and then another team who, in my opinion, Kanazawa was at a point where he was too top heavy, and he's not in a playoff spot at this moment in time. So not only was he too top heavy, his roster was a little old as well too. So getting 4 players, in addition to 2 of them being young, 1 of them being on a rookie scale contract, I really like this move for Kanazawa. I think this is exactly the type of move that he needed to make to help improve his roster, because he needed more depth added to his roster. Guys like Looney can play. He's of course got Bradley Beal, even though he has to deal with Beal's contract. He at least is able to, slot him into his lineup to produce for him as well. I know Cat's having a great year, and Drew's always reliable as well. But this trade, I believe, was made before Mark Williams started going off with the recent trade that Charlotte made, and just as well as, trying to feed him the ball more often as well too. And I personally like Stephon Castle a lot out of this rookie class. He is a solid player to receive. But again, the big talking point here is that the Ducks are, I think they're in the top 5 or top 6 right now. And he is going to be pairing Cat with Nikola Jokic. So Mitch, tell me about that. What do you think about the new two-headed monster that's been formed in Beijing, as well as the, kind of not necessarily a rebuild, but just, refresh with some new pieces that went towards our friend Lambert's way for Kanazawa?
Yeah, and I kind of want to trace back the Carl Anthony Towns pick to our initial startup. Cat was a huge value pick for our league. I believe he was selected in the 50s or the 60s because of his $49.2 million contract. And he was able to get traded to the New York Knicks, where he revitalized his value to be a top 10 9 category player in a redraft setting. So before Cat had a down year, his rebounds dipped to 8. Now it's back up to 13. He's scoring more in the system with New York. He's playing more minutes under Thibodeau. So Lambert with the Kanazawa Samurais made a great pump and dump trade for Carl Anthony Towns and really awakened really his team's horizon by adding more diverse assets, more flexible contracts with the Stephon Castle, with the Mark Williams. Yes, Bradley Beal was dealt in the deal, but more so as a salary filler, which is completely fine. You know, he still doesn't have his own first round pick, so Beal can provide some of that value to maybe he can get into that first round, and maybe he can make a team, maybe he can scare a team as one of the later seeds. So you never know. But in terms of the Beijing Ducks, Carl Anthony Towns and Nikola Jokic, two, I believe, top 5 players in 9 category leagues this year, is a scary, scary, scary two-headed monster. And I should be actually asking both of you guys, Josh and Andrew, since you guys are both playoff teams, how do you feel about dealing with this two-headed monster in a playoff setting?
Let's see, I'll go first. So he is pretty top heavy. And I know he's been trying to trade to get a little more cap space and flexibility. Both Cat and Jokic are not injury prone players, but if there is a specific matchup where one of them misses some time for a minor injury, personal reasons, whatever it might be, or a different role player on Beijing misses some time, he is a bit top heavy to be able to deal with that. So for you, Josh, what do you think about this trade? And also, too, another question I have for you, because we love your guys' Twitter account, and a lot of your tweets focus on young players, not just rookies, but guys who are still going through their stages of development, maybe in year 2, year 3, year 4. So just overall thoughts on Steph Castle and Mark Williams too.
But yeah. And so just looking in at that Beijing Duck squad, yeah, I just kind of peeked at it real quick on my phone, but definitely one of those guys is very talented at the top end. And if you're going to bet on guys, you're going to bet on guys as reliable as Cat, right? And as reliable as Jokic, who just have really, outside of last year for Cat, no substantial injury histories, and just people that have just continued to produce, right? But that workload over in New York, scary, man, spooky. Got guys playing high 30s, low 40 minutes, like consistently. And even a guy as consistent as Cat, you're going to want to anticipate being able to get rested at least a couple of times before the playoffs, right? You don't want to come into the playoffs on tired legs, especially on a team expected to contend like the Knicks in real life. So one of those things to watch out for, but that's definitely one of those trades that you make, right? If you can consolidate it, I think if you have a realistic chance to win the championship, you always take that chance. And on the vice versa, if you do not have a realistic chance, it's time to start pivoting, right? Because that's one of the things you don't want to be, is a mid team with kind of no direction, just going back and forth. But looking at Steph Castle, he's one of those guys that he's very inconsistent in terms of the role that he plays and what he's given on that offense. When Sochan's out, he's kind of featured a little bit more because he's that downhill driver that kind of gets some of that rim pressure like Sochan does, being able to collapse defense and opens up the offense for Wembanyama from the dunker spot or as a three-point threat. And one of those things is that he's kind of pegged in when he was drafted as a wing, right, because of the role that he played at UConn, of being able to swing into kind of that 3-level scorer point guard. Before going to UConn, he was kind of looked at as. But just being able to see how he is able to accept the role that he's given, even on San Antonio right now, where he's kind of sharing those point guard duties whenever he's on the court with CP3, who he's learning from, right? So obviously he's one of those guys that you need a little bit more patience with, just like Mark Williams. Like Mark Williams, whenever he's healthy, whenever he's on the court, is one of the most productive big men for his age in this, like, available in dynasty leagues. But you never know what you're getting with Charlotte, especially with LaMelo out now towards the end of the season. You don't know how reliable that production is going to be, or whether he's going to see the court as much at that point in time too.
Both great points. Both great points. All right. So let's take us over to our next trade here. This is going to feature Beijing again. And in this move, he got rid of the number 1 pick in the draft from 2024 with Zachary Risacher. So he sent Zachary Risacher away, and he received my dog, Ajay Mitchell, Daniel Tice, a 2025 first-round pick, and a 2025 second-round pick. Mitchell, what are your thoughts on this move right here?
Yeah, in most cases, in most drafts, you'd be crazy to sell the number 1 overall pick within their first year on their rookie contract. It almost never happens. Yet it has. A lot of people have that misconception about Zachary Risacher if they don't know coming in from a new dynasty perspective that Risacher isn't your typical number 1 pick. He doesn't provide that same level of excitement like a Cooper Flag or a Victor Wembanyama. His category skill set isn't the prototypical number 1 pick. He's more of a 3 and D prospect. Not so sure about the 3 yet. It's a little bit shaky. He has his highs and he has his lows, but he's going to be a solid NBA contributor for many years to come. He just doesn't have that top 50 30 upside that you want in a number 1 overall pick from a typical draft. With that being said, I love the return that the Beijing Ducks received. AJ Mitchell, if you do a redraft, he's probably going in the mid first round. He doesn't have a full scale contract yet, partly because he's injured. I think, eventually he would be converted. But AJ Mitchell in a redraft would probably go in the mid-teens. This guy can do it all. He's a great facilitator. He's a solid defender with great size. He plays well with SGA. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they have a team that lacks on-ball creation outside of Shea and Jalen Williams. And AJ Mitchell provides and fills in that gap. Who knows what Nikola Topic is going to do when he comes back? That is a complete unknown. But what we do know is that AJ Mitchell is a contributor. Andrew, we talk about AJ Mitchell all the time, and he is very reminiscent of someone else that we love, Andrew Nembhard. Someone who's a plug and play guy. He's a little smaller at the 2 guard, but he is tenacious on defense, and they're able to contribute on solid percentages without hurting your offensive efficiency. Also, Beijing Ducks was able to receive a mid first round pick. I believe the Aces are, what are they, Andrew? I think like
He's like in
15?
the teens, like he's like he's in a playoff spot. I want to say he's around like 13, 14, maybe a little tiny bit higher, like somewhere like between like 11 and 14, I think is his range right now.
Right. Okay. So in return, that's a great overall return for Risacher. Um, in terms of the Las Vegas Aces, AJ Mitchell's out probably for the entirety of the fantasy season throughout March. So if technically there is a production increase swapping the 2 out with Risacher, I just don't know if that's enough moving into the playoffs and beating a top 5 seed for the Las Vegas Aces. I mean, do you guys agree with my assessment here? How do you guys feel? Who won the trade?
Yeah, for me here, I think considering timeline and everything, I think being able to consolidate, you always want to be able to consolidate assets into something better, especially if you're in like a start 6, right? But like we talked, depth is important too, and just the quality of prospect and what you're going to get with that 2025 first, of course, you got to consider. It's one of those things that could look so much different in hindsight, but as is, I think given, their timeline, the Ducks with Mitchell on that contract, factoring that $578,000 contract into a salary cap league, just a really valuable piece. And I think I'm just as high on AJ Mitchell as you guys are. He was at the highest he was on my big board last year was 13. I think his last spot was 17. So I have him as a first round, like clearly a first round prospect. He's definitely delivered that. He's definitely that classic OKC guy was that positional versatility, that ability to kind of pass the ball, but also operate off ball in terms of his role as a shooter. Very efficient with his shots, very efficient being able to score on all levels, but he's able to kind of lead the offense too in spurts, which they need kind of off the bench. He was already their backup point guard. And when he was healthy and he was playing, he was a top 10 rookie, I think, without a doubt. But Risacher, who I'm kind of higher on than most in terms of his just general outlook. I think his 3-point shot, I buy into it long term. I think it's a strength issue right now. He doesn't have a lot of big misses when he's shooting his threes, but he's in a great spot. He's just a really high floor, kind of low ceiling guy, unless he kind of develops some of that on ball shot creation. And he's very similar to Jabari Smith to me in that that's not really one of those things that you just develop, right? You know, that ball handling, that shot creation, especially at the next level. Like you always have guys like Jaylen Brown or Kawhi Leonard who really do, but those are such rare cases. But I think just as is, I'll take the Mitchell side for me.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I noticed about in this salary league was there was, I think it was Beijing for a little bit, was not able to play Risacher because 12 million for the type of stats he does is, you know, a little steep. So there even was some issues due to how much salary he makes that was kind of coming into play here. You know, one thing I will say, it's slightly off topic from this trade here, is the emergence of AJ Mitchell has sparked rumors and even some real conversations that OKC might trade Topic, like, for example, to Brooklyn for Cam Johnson. What do either of you think about a potential move like that?
I mean, it makes a lot of sense from an OKC perspective. Topic is not necessarily having a lost season. He's working with the training staff at the NBA level. He's developing his strength and core and, that rehabilitation process. But Cam Johnson is, that plug and play guy that you need. Maybe he's not a high level starter in, a championship contending team, but if he can play at the sixth man role, similar to what he did with the Phoenix Suns that went to the finals, that'll play dividends for OKC's already deep roster construction. So, if they can add a 15-point per game guy on great efficiency, great shooting, pretty versatile on the defensive end, I think that the Thunder are, they're already title contenders, but it may put them over the top. And another thing, you look into trades at the trade deadline that impacted winning at a championship level. One that was semi recently was that Marc Gasol trade from the Memphis Grizzlies to the Toronto Raptors. Someone who was a veteran, not a superstar by any means, but a contributor, someone who's played at the championship level in the playoffs. And I think Cam Johnson definitely fits that mold, and maybe it'll take OKC to the top if they do move someone like a Nikola Topic for him.
For sure,
All
I
right.
agree. I agree completely. I think with Topic, I think he's just a talented on-ball presence that he just doesn't really make sense in terms of the OKC offense, right? They're just such a fluid offense. They have really like one or two on-ball guys, but they keep the ball moving so much. And I think that kind of really limits Topic's skill set in terms of that on-ball shot creator who kind of bases his skill off that rim pressure he generates and then being able to kick it out to some guys. That could be useful, but I feel like it would be more useful with their timeline right now to kind of capitalize on that and add someone like Cam Johnson.
Yeah, and OKC, like, they kind of like Topic deserves more playing time and usage as well, and that's really not something OKC can give to him. Whereas AJ Mitchell is an excellent option to this is the role we have in mind for you. This is what we're going to do, and he's going to say perfect. He's coming in as an older prospect, anyways. The expectation he's always going to be a plug and play type of guy that hits the ground running. Whereas Topic deserves that longer leash of development opportunity, and being the number one seed in the Western Conference is obviously not the best environment for that to happen. All right, let's cover our final trade of the day here. So, Josh, Mitchell and I planned for you to give your opinion on this one first. There's a specific reason for this that we will go into, but what do you feel about the Providence I think they're Providence Steamers or Steamrollers sending
Steamrollers.
Yes, okay, Providence Steamrollers. Sorry about that, Andrew. Sending Tobias Harris to the Hobart Chargers, our friend Ben, for Toumani Camara.
Man, just the salary, man. I got to factor in salary and just how good Toumani has been this year. I'm probably going to lead to the Toumani side. I think that's a little bit of my bias seeping through as a Sixers fan. There's a lot of some deep-seated bitterness towards the Tobias trade and having to let Jimmy buckets go.
Tobias
So
over
that kind of
me?
thing. Yeah, Tobias over is crazy. That still stings to this day. Oh man, I'm sugared now. But yeah, definitely Toumani. I think just the youth and just how valuable that skill set is in a fantasy setting, and especially in a nine cat setting. In real life, obviously, like Tobias is the better player, but in that fantasy setting where you're getting those steals, you're getting those threes, you have that youth as well, and then you factor in that contract and the flexibility that contract gives you in this league. I'll definitely lean towards that side as the winner in this trade.
Yeah, I mean, Tobias is great. Don't get me wrong, but just that salary difference. I feel like you probably could have pulled a little bit more out of that, in exchange for Kamara, because the Providence is rebuilding. So getting shedding off salary cap or something isn't necessarily a huge difference to him. More what he had in mind was acquiring youth, which he did get here with Toumani Kamara. And then one thing I will say too is that Toumani was a late round selection last year. I think he was only put on like a 2-year contract, so he's going to be due for a raise
No,
sooner
actually,
than.
Andrew, they gave him a 4 year.
Oh, they
So
gave
he
him four
actually has,
years. Okay,
including
so
this year, he has three cheap years of like 2 million each.
that was the
So
original contract Phoenix gave him, right?
I think it was like something that Portland gave him
Oh, Portland. Okay,
after
because I
the
know because
yeah.
Phoenix originally drafted him, and I don't know if they were the ones that signed that deal or maybe it was Portland that did that. It's possible that it was them because I know your cost control is not as long if you're coming in, as a second round player or if you're on a 2-way contract that's converted to a full contract. But I know Toumani was signed to a full contract out of the draft by Phoenix, and then shortly after was traded to Portland before he even played a game for Phoenix. It does turn out he does have some more cost control, basically at around a 3 mil salary or below that. So yeah, I mean Toumani's great. I know a lot of people have been trying to acquire him, especially heading into the deadline here, where we expect hopefully for the Blazers to sit some players. But Toumani already does play a super large role. It's not like there's going to be a massive minute spike or anything like that because he's already very close to, if not above, 30 minutes a game already. So he is good, and I don't see it as too much of a drop off from Tobias in the first place. So then when you factor in age and salary, yeah, you probably could have got a little bit more for Toumani.
You know what's funny, Andrew? I think ever since this trade happened about 2 weeks ago, I don't think Tobias has cracked the top 250. I mean, you look at those last 2 weeks, and it's hideous, man. His field goal, his free throw, all dipped, and Toumani Kamara's had a breakout game, last game. So it's just tough and a little bit funny in a way that how, after the trade happened, Tobias just ultimately dipped. I believe for the season he was like top 75 when the trade happened. And now things have leveled out where Toumani is in that like 110 area and Tobias is barely clinging on to the top 100. So factoring all that in, it's not looking too hot for the Hobart Chargers. I know he's not sometimes a fan of our trade analysis that we provide, but I think on a very objective level, Josh, you made some great points in terms of salary and production, and I tend to lean with the Toumani Kamara side as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know in Hobart's defense, I know the biggest reason why he did this was to improve his field goal percentage because Toumani's is pretty low. Or Hobart focuses on having a higher field goal percentage for his build. So I know that was probably part of his reasoning for this move. So there is that, and it probably did increase his field goal percentage a little bit too. But yeah, with these young guys who are playing a big role, especially like what Josh mentioned earlier, the Blazers are in such a weird mix of playing veterans and young guys at the same time, not really focusing enough on young guys, sometimes even going as far as to bench Scoot Henderson. It's something that I was talking about with another friend earlier today is some of these like older coaches, especially older players who used to play, guys who are, really trying to hang on to their job security, always just play these veterans because it's safer for them, that's going to more potentially ensure more wins for them, whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, guys like Toumani, you can just tell from his first year or two that he's going to be, spending the majority of his life playing in the NBA. It's not going to be at a superstar or all-star level, but he's just one of these complimentary guys that's always going to be on a team getting minutes. So that wraps up 5 trades, as well as covering the roster that Josh and Sam have put together within the Angle Dynasty League. So, this was an absolutely excellent dynasty discussion today. Josh, it was a pleasure having you on. Tell the people where they can find your work, where they can follow you on social media.
Yes, sir. Hit us up on Twitter, man. PointMadeBball at PointMadeBball. Come follow our work, and then we got to get you guys, Andrew and Mitchell, into one of our dynasty leagues over that we run to kind of get a taste of the custom salary aspect, and we'll get some more collaboration going on in the future, brothers.
Definitely, we can try that co-management style that you and Sam have, but on the Angle side here. So if there's an opening, let us know.
And then Mitch, you and I can fight about it all the time. We're actually in a current matchup with you, Josh. So Brax and I are primarily running the industry pickup league, and we got you guys this week. First place versus second place.
First versus second, man. Yeah, I was gonna talk to you guys about that. It's about to be a spicy one. Y'all whooped our butt last time. Y'all up 4 games on us right now. So we're trying to hopefully even out the series matchup before we get into playoffs, because man, it's coming quick, man. The season, you just blinking. We're halfway there already.
I always feel like, too, that we're going against a revenge game each time we play you guys, because we play the other half of Point Made first, and we beat them both times. So now I'm just like, great, now the other half wants to beat us even more.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about Sam and Liam. Obviously, I'm the deciding factor in terms of success. Sam's team's downhill quick.
No, you guys are, like we said, you guys are in second place. So the roster that Josh is helping to co-run is doing very, very well, very, very well in that league. And that, as you can attest to, the 40 games cap, the competitive, the guys that are in that league is freaking hard, huh?
Oh man, I leave all the games cap stuff to my boy Evan, man. He got the spreadsheet figured out. I'm just there along for the ride.
Yeah, we got a spreadsheet too. It's a whole thing. Spreadsheets for tracking, the games cap, who you're going to start, who we're going to potentially stream in, playing with injury flags, all this stuff. It is a very, very complicated league, but it is a ton of fun.
It's going to be fun, man. We'll circle back next week after a matchup. We'll talk about it again.
Absolutely. That sounds great. So that's going to do it for us today. Make sure to check out our website to view all of our content, anglefantasybasketball.wordpress.com. Let us know in the comments section below what you thought about some of these dynasty trades that took place. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and we will see you guys next time.